Welcome back to Lenz's Comic Corner Classic, Lesser Known Classic. This is episode number 33, 55, Doubleshot 32, 49. We got two Marvel trades. First up, it's Spider-Ham Apocalypse Now. Yep. Aporkalypse Now. Yes, and it's written by Zeb Wells, the guy who, in the last few years, has become, who had the most despised run in the history of Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah, it was not well received, but this is before that, well before that, and before he did his run for Helions. And this book came out 2019, so roughly 6 years ago. Yep. Art by Will Robson. So, in this book, we kind of get Spider-Ham's backstory. It actually gets sort of like, oh, we have this radioactive Aunt May. It's just, we get Spider-Ham's backstory in the opening couple of pages of this book, where it's basically just like the first couple pages is a partial retelling of Amazing 15. He basically helps out with the Scavengers, and everything's going fine. Meet up with basically Virgil Jameson, who was known as J. Jonah Jackal. And then, like, we have this other event going on, then fighting a version of Daredevil between black and white. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then, this is interesting. So, then, Spider-Ham ends up in Mary Jane's apartment. Yes. And I'm sure people seeing this nowadays probably be like, well, basically, Squid Mob were created, basically. But basically, this is, well, this is kind of the thing. Those of you curious, though, who is writing Amazing Spider-Man at the point in time this book comic came out? If you want to know, it was Nick Spencer. So, it was the good run, people like. So, yeah, and of course, he has Spider-Man act like a baby, but so he's actually an adult. So, he does reference the Adventures of Spider-Guy Dame, which was a event written by Christos Gage, sequel to Spider-Verse. So, excuse me, they went to the White Light Test was destroyed. But basically, people called the Inhuman fixed it. So, yeah, this is going to go back to the universe again. I can explain why, basically, and then we have where they take it to the Baxter building and meet up with the Fantastic Four, which of course they're wearing the outfits that were associated with Dan Slott's run in the title. How do I know that? Blue gloves, black torso. Yeah, it's Dan Slott's. So it's a really crazy ride, and the original Spider-Man is brought along. Yeah. Those of you probably thinking, like, wait a minute. Lynch is Ham. You might thinking, what, is this like an original character? Yeah, then of course basically becomes a World War II escapade. Yep, so beats up Nazis, because of course he does. And it ends up on another animal base Earth. They just keep traveling for a while. More animal base stuff. And then I find out who actually is responsible for this. Kang the Conqueror. Yep. Actually, it's Kangaroo Conqueror. You're like, what? Yeah, Kangaroo the Conqueror. You've been thinking, who? Yeah, he is a character from the original series of Peter Porker Spider-Ham back in the 80s. Yeah, for some reason, Zeb Wells brought this version back, who appeared only in that one issue, and then he's here. By the way, that issue came out in 1987. This came out in 2019. So this came roughly 32 years after his previous appearance. And we have the Council of Kings, which is interesting because, well, knowing after this we have the live-action version of Council of Kings. So, yeah, it just, Kang is kind of responsible for this stuff. And then we reference the events of the 21st Stand-Up for Avengers. Really interesting stuff here. Then it comes from Galactus, of course. Oh yeah, and then it turns out, get this. So, it turns out that this King is not King, but it's frickin' Mojo. Yep, Mojo. You're like, what? Yes, so the one he was controlling is actually someone who's actually original to this book, and then he got killed off by the next issue. Yeah, it's not the Prime Universe Kang. No. Then you have one Kang who appears in this book too, but the Council of Kings. Yeah, because we want to do Kang the Conqueror now, apparently. And by the way, this last issue here, this is a clear homage to the debut of Hobgoblin back in, I think it was Amazing Spider-Man 238, I think it was. Yeah, great, they did that, and we have all this stuff here. Mojo getting involved was interesting. And then we have a horse version of Black Bolt breaks out of a cell. And then they kind of defeat him with the collective Kangs, and then the book just ends. And then we see like an old man Spider-Ham. You're like, what? Yes, an old man Spider-Ham. By the way, Marvel listed these issues under the original title of the book, which is Marvel Tales starring Peter Porker the Spider-Ham. Yeah, and apparently these issues were considered issues 21 and 25 of the title. So, you might be asking, Nick, did Spider-Ham appear again after this title? Well, did he appear again after this? He did. He appeared in a one-shot in a book known as Spider-Ham Great Power Responsibility. Mostly put some digital stuff. He's part of the Spider-Man and Spider-Verse stuff. His most recent thing was actually in Spider-Verse versus Venomverse. Yep. Yeah. Very interesting miniseries. Give roughly a 9 out of 10. Next comes a book released during a period of time I love for comics. The period of, for Marvel Comics, 2004 up until 2012. This time period, and this is my honest because I was reading this point in time, this point in time for Marvel Comics was really good. Yes, we had stuff like House of M, Civil War. Aside from that, other books besides those other books, we had a lot of good content. X-Men was doing fantastic in that decade. We had a lot of really good stories. Books like Messiah Complex, Messiah War, Neurosha, Second Coming. Spider-Man was basically really good at this period. It was very mixed per se. For the most part, it was okay. And then we had the offense that was One More Day. But it became okay afterwards. I got a little better, but in my opinion, it got better with New Ways to Die. But it slowly creeped back up. It went up and down. Cap had a really good, basically, run during this period of time. I like the Iron Man stuff. Even Thor. Avengers was fantastic. It's like a lot of books of our comics was kicking a lot of butt this period of time. And anytime I basically review a comic book in this period of time, I just feel so happy because I checked out a good era of Marvel Comics when I chipped in. Yes, of course, we have good comics since then, but I love this time period. So we go basically do Timestorm 2009 to 2099. Yep, written by Brett Reed. Yeah, the only reason Marvel did this in 2009 because it was 90 years before the events of 2099. Though I should point out, though, this is not the same 2099 that appeared in the 90s. Nope, completely different timeline. Yep, this is a completely different version. So you have Brett Reed doing the main miniseries. We have Timestorm Spider-Man, Spider-Man written by our boss AJ. Okay, Brian Reed writes the whole thing, and X-Men is by Fraser Irving. He does the artwork for that one. So this whole thing is basically, it is basically a 4-issue miniseries plus 2 one-shots. Yep. By the way, I love this cover image here. When it comes to Miguel, this version of him basically, so this is kind of interesting. So we start off with what appears to be, oh, is this Frank Castle? Oh, no, this is Jake Lackey. The 2099 version of Punisher, which, this is kind of weird for this timeline. So, in the original timeline, he was part of Public Eye. Here, he's part of a group known as the Punishers, which I'm sure they were inspired by Frank Castle. And he wants vengeance of the superheroes for killing his family, despite the fact in the prime timeline he was killed by the guy that became Venom. 2099. And of course, he worships Thor in the religion from the future, which, okay, so they kept that here. So apparently it was accepted, and then we have Spider-Man swinging around. Then he's shot by Jake Lackey, who says the future. Yes, the future. He's like, oh crap. And then we cut to, I kid you not, Tiberius Stone, who is younger, looks a lot like Peter Parker, and Lila is working with him, which is weird because he never works with Miguel. Actually, it's not him. It's actually not Tiberius. Actually, is, oh, this is actually a Stone. I don't think it's Tiberius. He looks too young. So, if Alchemax, you have a guy who looks like, and for some reason, the Alchemax logo, I'm not sure why this is. Like, this guy here looks a lot like Black Racer, with the Avengers logo, the A, on his sleeve. Do not know the reason for that. So, oh, by the way, love the cool nod to a classic Iron Man here. I thought it was really cool. Yep. So, he just looking around, and of course, basically, then they run into Miguel O'Hara, who's here with his fiance, who was his fiance in the main timeline too. So, there's a combat arena, and then we see the Human Torch. Yeah, in the 29 universe, the Fantastic Four, they actually did have a short-lived comic book. They were probably combating in the arena. Yes. So, talk about the Public Eye stuff. Even Public Eye basically dressed like Punisher for some reason. Don't know why. And then, of course, basically, we have this red-haired woman whose hair looks like brain stuff, or could be like Medusa, where she runs into Peter Parker, who's put in a mental asylum for reasons. Then she reads his mind, and yeah, he's in the past. And then Miguel, and then, not Miguel, it's, well, I was talking to Stone, it could be anybody. And then we cut to Wolverine and Luke Cage. We're curious of what the heck is going on. And then they're confronted by Jake Lackey, and then Jake shoots Wolverine. He's sent to the future where he's confronted by 2099 Hulk. Yes. Yes, Hulk had a comic too, except his comic lasted for 10 issues. Yes, believe it or not, it was 10 issues, and he was killed off in 2099 AD Apocalypse. Yes, they kill off with a one-shot. And look, you want to know who that guy is right there? That is Ghost Rider 2099. His real name is Cockrum. I don't know if it's nod to Zephyr Cockrum. He's basically a cyborg. Yeah. So then, of course, we have people like listening to Reed Richards. And then, for some stupid reason, now, in the prime time, in the original timeline for 2099, Jake's family, which is basically his wife and mom, not his wife and daughter, where we have guys wearing the mask of Wolverine, Captain America, Spider-Man, and the Thing. And then Jake basically is seeing, okay, so you're probably curious. So, okay, you said, oh, look, it's okay, it's Spider-Woman. You're like, why is Steve, part of his outfit, black? Except that's not Steve Rogers in that costume. Oh, no, this guy is much thinner than Steve Rogers. That's Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Yeah, this is like Brubaker did right after Cap died. This actually, fun fact, this comic came out during the events of Dark Reign, of really a crossover. So, yeah, this is New Avengers, and then you have Wolverine fighting a Hulk. And then he is confronted by Ghost Rider 2099, who's just an AI. Oh, yeah, and that's what he looks like without the flame on. Yeah, more so with Alchemax, and then we see it look like a version of Xavier, which, by the way, also when people see Wolverine referred to as a teacher for some reason. And he goes to Fort Dawson, Maryland, which is a containment facility of mutants. And then we see, so actually, okay, this is Tyler Stone. Interesting, not Tobias, Tyler. You're thinking, wait a minute. Okay, so it was revealed during Dan Slott's Superior Spider-Man that the character Tyler Stone, who popped up in Iron Man Volume 3 by Kurt Busiek, that character was retconned to be Miguel's grandfather. So he pulls this thing off, and it turns out it's actually just, this might be Tiberius, so it looks like he's a combination of like Scorpion and Green Goblin for some reason. Then we jump over to the Spider-Man one-shot where we have Miguel take on Human Torch. The artwork is a bit weird for this one-shot. So Spider-Man does break out. Yeah, and we have more of Alchemax, and we have the Brain Woman here. And like, oh, look, a neat costume. Heroic Spider-Man. And it's like somehow Spider-Man's trademark copyright Alchemax injuries. Come on, this is emergency. Yeah. And then we have Spider-Man fighting Scorpion. Then Miguel basically is confronted by Human Torch. And then cut to the Timestorm X-Men one, which should be called Wolverine. Not sure why it's called X-Men 4. But I kind of have a theory of why. Because X-Men did have a comic book under 2099, not Wolverine. But why not just call it Wolverine? Why call it X-Men? The X-Men are basically not in this book. And then we see an Old Man Logan. I say a Old Man Logan because that's not the Mark Millar Old Man Logan. This is a version of him who's lost his arm. So, yeah, and then we see, like, look at the facility related to X-Men's universe. And apparently people, DC were turning the hoax. So the X-Men go out and kill them all. Yeah, and then we find out who's in charge of this facility that they're in. Basically, the Smithsonian. Okay, somebody's using it as a base. And it turns out it's none other than Dr. Victor Von Doom. Yes. So he's one kind of responsible for this, and I love this cover here of Wolverine fighting a Hulk, which I thought that was really cool. And then apparently Jake Lackey is like is basically out of control with this whole. So it turns out, so who wore these masks? Who knows? So then we have stuff basically trying to revive. Then we have. Yeah, then we have more people going wild with the whole Human Torch stuff here. Then we have a comedy bit here. It's like Honesty Web. So yeah, they're trying to get back to the past, and then for some reason, the past and the future, the 2020 are mending together. It's really weird. Yeah, Time Avengers family. Then we have, I kid you not, we have the Dark Avengers show up, which is Carlos Soft and Miss Marvel, Dark Wolverine, Ares, Hawkeye, who's actually Bullseye, the Sentry, Sinister Spider-Man, who's actually Venom, Matt Gorgon, and Iron Patriot. And then we have Cockrum meeting basically Norman Osborn. Yeah, this came out during Dark Reign. That's why I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed Dark Reign. It was a really fun event. Yep. And then apparently the Punishers came to the past for some reason. He's freed. And then you have Ghost Rider fighting Iron Patriot for some reason. And then we see what appears to be, according to Doctor Doom, the actual 2099, where we see Jake Lackey, aka Punish 20, and Doom 2099. I thought that was really cool. Yep. And we have all this stuff here, and then of course, basically, then Jake goes after Tyler Stone with a version of Mjolnir, which he gets shot by, and of course he gets hit by it. And then everything goes kind of back to normal. Then Laya looks on the internet, and that's it. So here's kind of the weird thing. The Miguel O'Hara in this miniseries, he would actually sadly get killed off 5 years later in the Edge of Spider-Verse event. Well, the Edge of Spider-Verse is part of the tie-in for Edge of Spider-Verse tie-in for Spider-Man 29. He was one of the ultimate Spider-Man 29 got killed off in that story, and also somehow Miguel can feel it despite the fact he wasn't there. But this is awesome. I love this thing. I thought it was really cool. The fact you had a little mini event here, just a quick 4-issue mini series. Plus 2 one-shots. Didn't overstay its welcome. I thought it was really good. It's roughly a 10 out of 10. Though, I was not a fan of the artwork for... the main miniseries, I give a 10. I thought it was really good. The X-Men was really good. I like the writing in the Spider-Man one, but I was not a big fan of the artwork. So I'm going to give it a 9.75 out of 10. This whole thing, okay? So yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications. Next up we have is basically back to My Just a Darling. Okay, next video. Bye.